Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and very good afternoon. My name is Muhammad Zulfaqar Aiman bin Suhaimi from 80105B.
My name is Siti Narifa binti Abdul Halim.
I am Nurul Fatia Irwani binti Muhammad Rusti.
My name Ni Muhammad Hazrul Hafiz bin Ni Muhammad Syafi'i from 81105B.
Verbal messages consists of the sound and the words to communicate with the person. There are 10 principles in the verbal messages. Number 1 is a message or package. It is about we talk the fact that non-verbal and verbal at the same time. Number 2 is the meaning messages in people. People will usually have their own meaning for the words based on their various experience. For example, person who has been a bad relationship might have different meaning for the word of love. Number 3. Meaning are denotative and connotative. Some of people will have a more emotional behind the certain words. For example, the doctor have not successful to save their patient life. Number 4. Message is a very abstraction. Some of words might have a more abstract meaning to others. For example, the entertainment and films was cover a fairly general of concept. Number 5. The meaning in politeness depends on who is talking. For example, the friends at the workplace might have a compliment for the each of the people at the social media have talking about the nonsense for the real reasons. This is also can influence by their culture.
Messages can be anonymous or anonymous. Some messages are anonymous or signed, that is, the author is clearly identified, as it is in your textbooks, newspaper. So for the anonymous, the author is not identified. For example, on readmyprofessor.com, messages meaning can deceive. It's come no surprise that some messages are truthful and some are deceptive. In interpersonal communication, on the assumption that people tell the truth and some people do lie. Types of lie. Pro-social deception to achieve some good. Self-enhancement is to make sure yourself look good. And last is antisocial deception is to harm someone. It's like you wanna hurt someone. Messages vary in assertiveness. For this section, this section clarifies the nature of assertive communication and offer guidelines for increasing our own assertiveness at the same time to reducing any aggressive tendencies when appropriate. Okay, first we need to analyze our assertive communication. This is the first step, and second is we need to rehearsal assertive communication and communicate assertively. Messages can confirmation and disconfirmation. For disconfirmation, it's like you know someone in a presentation, and for confirmation is about you agree with what someone talk in presentation. Messages vary in cultural sensitivity. This is the great step toward developing confirmation and avoid disconfirmation messages. For example, you need to do some research about other country because every country has a different culture. As a conclusion, we need to learn the principle of verbal messages because it is closely related to our life.
Today I want to present about guideline for using verbal methods effectively. This guideline have three for I should present. Have three. First, extensionalist avoid intentional, and second, see the individual, avoid illness, and distinguish between fact and inference, avoid fact, inference, and confusion. Okay, first I want to go about intentional orientation. Intentional orientation, the tendency to view people, object, and events in terms of how they are talked about a label rather than in terms of how they actually exist. Okay, for second, number two is extensional. Extensional is orientation. Extensional orientation is the opposite of intentional orientation. The tendency to look first at the actual people, object, and event, and only then at the labels. Okay. Second, we are go to the illness. Illness is failing to recognize the world as infinitely complex, thinking you know all there is to know something. An example of a nullness is attitude is reflect is in a quote from British Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli. To be conscious that you are ignorant is a great step toward knowledge, and each statement is mentally with and etc. Okay. For the last, distinguish between fact and inference, avoid fact and inference confusion. First, fact. Inference confusion. What happened when you add on inference as if they were facts, a barrier to clear thinking. For number two is a factual statement. A statement about something you observe. Okay. Number three is a inferential statement. Inferential statement is a statement that you make on the basis of what you observe plus your own conclusion. Interpersonal choice point. Procedural deception integrate exercise. Distinguishing fact from inference. That's all from me. Thank you.
So, the fifth point for guideline using the verbal message effectively is discriminate, among which we have to avoid indiscriminate. First of all, we have to understand what is discrimination. Discrimination is our act treating a person differently or unfairly because who they are or because they possess certain characteristic. So the next point is polarization. What is polarization? Polarization is a significant cause of miscommunication simply because in our language the gray area lack the ability to articulate itself. It just means that the polarization is a disruption to our communication in many environments such as work, home, and school. So the conclusion is what we can learn from this topic is there are many principal verbal message that we can use to communicate with other, and there are some guideline for using verbal message effectively.